In the year 2015, when I was 19 years old, I was still living at my parents' house in a small rural village in Germany. One of my closest friends was living only 2 streets away from my place. My friend and I were both secret smokers. Kind of childish, I know. We often met up at night to have a smoke together in our car before going to sleep, which in hindsight was super dumb, because both of our parents told us separately years later that they could totally smell the residue of smoke in our cars. It all started by both of us being too afraid to stand in an alley in the dark to smoke. And over time, it became a kind of ritual where we used to talk about life, our day, and the usual. We were very close at the time. In December 2015, I messaged my friend shortly after midnight. I asked her if she was willing to meet up for the tea. Usually, just have a smoke and talk about some stuff. She replied that she was going to pick me up with her car this time. So I stealthily left the house, walked around the corner, and jumped into the passenger seat of her car. For more than a month now, we had a new regular spot to park the car and just sit there. It was on a dirt road in the forest just outside of town. You might see where this is going, and that this is kind of dumb. In September, we were still parking in an alley in town, but we got spotted once by the parents of a mutual friend. So, we decided to go more low-key and picked a new spot outside of town in one of the forests connecting our village to the next one via back roads. Honestly, the spot was a great mixture of being scary and kind of romantic. It was dead silent in the woods. In rural German forests like that, there are barely any audible animals. It felt great to just sit there with the windows down while talking in a low voice and just listening to the silence outside of the car. The latter part will become important. Less than 5 minutes after I entered the car, we parked on the small dirt road inside the local forest. Lights off, windows down, no radio, just sitting with a close friend and almost whispering, whatever is on your minds. We've been sitting there for a few minutes. The radio and car lights have been turned off ever since we parked. The only light inside the car was the dim lighting of the onboard computer. By that time, my eyes were adjusted to the darkness. While in conversation, my eyes passed to the mirror on the passenger door, the right side of the car. In the mirror, I saw a human-like silhouette standing in the distance behind the car in the shrubbery of the woods, out on the dirt road. My first reflex was to freeze. I stayed silent for a few seconds and did not answer my friend's question. I told her in a whispering voice that I could see somebody standing in the woods behind us. She then laughed loudly. She thought I was bullshitting. But when I remained silent and fixated on the mirror, she realized that I was serious. I looked at her and told her to just drive, that there is somebody in the woods with us. She said, "Okay," and turned on the car and the lights. She put the car in drive and started to turn the car around 180 to face the road going back to our town. When the car faced our intended direction, the lights illuminated the dirt road and surrounding shrubbery. And there was the man, clear as day, standing on the now after turning right side of the road. He was barely illuminated for a few seconds before he turned to his left and sprinted into the woods. The thing that bugs me about this, he was a fair bit closer and he switched sides. Before we turned the car, he was on the passenger side. But after we turned, he was on the side of the road where the driver's side was previously located. That plus being closer makes me think that he was about to approach the driver's side. We drove back to her place and fell asleep. After talking about the possibilities for a while, I know that this isn't the scariest story of all time, but there is something creepy about being in complete darkness and silence, and then suddenly another human is close by watching. Back in 2016, My friends and I, for the longest time, had been easing to go camping at our local camping site in the Los Padres National Park in Southern California. When we found the perfect weekend to go, it didn't interfere with any of our work schedules. We set the date. 3 days before the trip, we found out we were going to get hit by the El Nino rainstorm. We, being the type of dudes that we are, didn't care if we got hit by the storm while camping. So we packed up our cars and made the 45-minute drive to the campsite. The campsite was a family-friendly one, where there were about 100 camping lots that circled around the clearing in the forest. We found the perfect spot that was underneath huge thick trees that would help block as much rain as possible. And it helped out that the restrooms were only 30 yards away. As soon as we got to our spot, we took advantage of the afternoon sky being clear for the moment, and we rushed to set up our spot. The layout that we did was that we pushed our tents close by, where our tent doors were only 6 feet apart. The reason why we did this is because in order to combat the rain, I bought a 30 feet by 30 foot thick blue canopy tarp that I threw over to cover us from the rain above and from the rain that would be running through the ground. It was a genius move on my part, but whenever he would walk around our tent, he'd be making so much noise from crunching the plastic tarp. Hours passed, and we were all around the campfire. It was late into the evening, and this was the first time that I noticed that there were barely any other campers. They were mainly camping in their RVs, like the fake campers they were. In my honest opinion, they were the smart ones though. Unlike my friends and I, who were sleeping in 2 small tents, with our only protection being the blue tarp. I was getting tired from a long day of work, and I decided that I was going to go to sleep. My friends followed my lead as well. The way that the sleeping arrangements were was that I had my friend Ray sleeping in my tent, and AJ and S were sleeping in theirs. Before I called it a night, I whispered to Ray and told him, I'm going to prank call S and AJ, but I'm not going to say anything. Ray smiled as I dialed up my friends. I called them unrestricted, and S's phone started to ring off. Both of them, being the way that they are, got timid very easily as they said to one another, Who's calling you this late in the night? I don't know. They called me unrestricted. Are you going to answer? Of course not. Right? And I was holding in our laughter as they ignored our call. I decided to do it one more time. Once their phones started to ring, they started to freak out once again, and they said, Who is it this time? The same person, I think. I'm going to have to answer. As they did answer, S said in a very shaking tone, Hello. Ray and I had to hold in our laughter as we kept as quiet as possible, not wanting to make any noises that would give off that it was us. I held the phone close to my mouth as I began to breathe heavily in a murderous way. I ended the call, and just hearing them freak out the way they did was making my night even funner. Me being the idiot that I am called them one more time, and this time picked up the phone immediately and said in a tough voice, Look, whoever this is better stop. I'm about to call the cops if you keep on calling. This is not a threat. Ray and I looked at one another as we at the same time began to fake moaning so loud and immediately started to bawl out in laughter. AJ and S were so mad at us for pulling this prank on them, and they were cursing us out. I finally calmed down from laughing so loudly and told the boys, Good night. I'll have pancakes ready in the morning. Since I fell asleep relatively easily, I was out in a matter of minutes while Ray, AJ, and S were up for a little longer. I was the first of my friends to wake in the morning, and as I promised, I had the pancakes already cooking by the time that everyone else woke up. The smell of me cooking woke up my friends, and one by one, they got out of their tents. As we were eating, AJ spoke up and said, Hey, AJ, the prank that you pulled last night went a little too far. Yeah, man. You had us ready to run to our car and take off. I, feeling a bit guilty, apologized and said, Sorry, guys. My bad. Yeah, it's one thing to prank call us like that, but then to walk around our tent and then go inside it in the middle of the night. It's totally out of bounds. S said I, not knowing what they were talking about, said, "What do you guys mean? Come on, still with the jokes. You were the one that was walking around our tent and you walked in." Ray spoke up and said, "That wasn't Jay who was walking around. I thought that it was you two getting your revenge on us, scaring you. That wasn't us doing that. It was you two." So to explain, after I fell asleep, about an hour had passed where Ray, S, and AJ were still up, and all was quiet in the forest until the sounds of footsteps were heard stepping on our blue tarp that was on the ground. At first, my friends thought that it could have been just a forest animal wandering around, but the heavy footsteps were a dead giveaway that it was a person. As they described, the person was walking all around our tents, making constant figure 8 south. The person would place their fingers on the tent's fabric walls to run them up and down. The footsteps finally stopped after a couple of minutes, right in between our tent doors. The 3 of them were already having their hearts pounding out of their chests. It was silent for a long minute until the sound of the tent's zipper being slid open. As AJ says, the tent's door was only opened halfway, but it was too dark to see anything clearly. But in the darkness, both Ass and AJ saw the silhouette of a man's face pop his head into the tent to look at both of them. AJ and Nas faked being asleep the entire time, but they kept their eyes locked onto the man. The man then opened the tent fully and walked inside, just standing at the entrance. The man didn't say a word or do anything, just watched the both of them lying on their sleeping bags. After their longest minute ever, the man just took his steps out of the tent, and I could hear him walking away, disappearing into the night. The entire time that this was happening, S and AJ thought that it was either me or Ray doing this, and Ray thought that it was a J or S doing it. Back to us arguing back and forth at the breakfast table, we were interrupted by a man walking to our campsite, and he said, "Good morning, boys. How'd the 4 of you slept last night?" This man spoke in a smoker's voice, as if he had been doing that for all of his 45 years of being alive. He wore a dirty sweat-stained t-shirt that looked more gray at this point, and his blue jeans looked like they had never been taken off or washed. He smelled a lot like liquor. Not a good sign at 8 o'clock in the morning, and his words were just mumbling around. We didn't say a word to this guy, as he then asked us if we had any cigarettes to spare him. I said that we didn't smoke, and he said, "Oh well, if you boys want to visit me in my RV, just stop by any time." The man continued to walk away towards the restrooms, and as he was done using them, he walked back to our campsite. He didn't say anything this time, but he looked at us and gave us a nearly toothless smile, and he walked back to his RV. I took note of his RV as it was the only RV that stuck out as being dirty and more rundown than the others. We quickly summed up the man as the person who was walking around our tents last night, and S and AJ now remember that they smelled liquor from the person who was standing in their tent. We all agreed that we would keep an extra eye out on this guy, and if he did spend another night, we would most likely report him back to the park rangers if he tried anything else. When it was around lunchtime now, the man came back, not to use the restroom, but just to talk to us. "So are any of you boys interested in buying an RV? You all can go check it out right now and see if you want to buy it. I don't need it anymore since my wife left me. Just go check it out. You can even go inside," he said. "No, we are good, sir," I said with a visible threatening tone. The man seemed to notice this, and he walked away. The man did end up leaving a few hours before sunset, but the entire time that he was there, he kept glancing at us. The man had his RV about 50 yards away from us, and I noticed that he had a restroom right next to his RV. Why did he make an effort to walk all the way over to the campsite that we were at to use our restroom? Also, why did he even use ours? If most RVs come with restrooms installed in them? Whatever the man wanted, we were just glad that we were about to enjoy the rest of our weekend. My family and I went on a trip to the Hocking Hills area of southern Ohio a few weeks ago. There was a place that I always wanted to visit, the abandoned ghost town, Moon Boomville Rail Tunnel. I've never been to this area, so I didn't know what to expect, but I did know it was pretty deep in the woods. We took a trip from our rented cabin using Google for GPS to the location. We start driving, and it's, for the lack of better words, really impoverished where we aren't driving /hills. Have eyes-esque. We literally only see a few cars on the way there and are on the back roads. We get to a point where we need to enter into a forest, and we're close to the tunnel. There was a sign that said we were entering Bubblewood. For a little additional information, I drive a Mercedes that I am just lucky to have and have my husband. In the car, my 10-year-old nonverbal autistic son and my 6-year-old daughter drive down this really creepy stone road in the forest, and there is nothing back there. No houses, no cars, nobody. We see signs that we were close and pulled into the parking lot. There is a footbridge with a ton of stuff on it that people put there. We walk over the footbridge and make our way toward the tunnel, which is a lot larger than I expected. We hear this sound coming from the other side of the tunnel that goes into the woods away from the parking lot. A truck came driving through the tunnel toward us while we were on foot. He gets out of his truck with a chainsaw, and it's a guy in his 60s. He walks with my entire family everywhere we go and through the tunnel. I tried to make small talk with him and pull some info about if he worked for the Department of Natural Resources, etc., but he really wasn't budging. We turn around to walk out of the tunnel, and he starts using a chainsaw behind us, and the sound is just echoing through the tunnel. At this point, we have no cell phone service, and literally no one knows my family is out there except us. I was already worried my car was sending the wrong idea to people, like we have money or something, because we don't. We rush to the car to get the kids in their booster seats, and this guy comes driving over the footbridge in his truck towards us in the parking lot. He stops again and gets out of his truck and starts walking the other direction, much to our relief. About this time, I noticed there were dusty handprints on my car. I asked my husband if they were his, and we compared his hand and my son's, and they were not a match. I don't know who could have touched the car, because we were both with the chainsaw. Man, the entire time we were there. Get out of there as fast as possible. Just a few minutes later, I looked in my rearview mirror, and there was a bunch of dust kicking up behind us. And there he is. You had to have driven pretty fast on the stone road to catch up to us like that. There is nowhere to go in these woods. The road is basically one lane, and we have no cell service or GPS. Every time I think we lose him, he is there again. I'm waiting for my tires to get popped or something, or for this guy to ram me off the road into a ravine. In the woods. Finally, we get out of the woods, and I turn around. He's still following. We were following printed directions to get back, and I ended up making a wrong turn in the excitement. The guy in the truck was finally gone, and I turned around to go back past the stone road that goes into the forest. There was one lone house near this road, and his truck parked there. He had to have seen us drive onto this road into the woods and taken some back way to the tunnel. I don't know if he was just trying to protect the site from more graffiti or what, but he really creeped us out. It was like every scary movie trope rolled into one single event.